Imagine for a moment that there is a book, one that has been passed down from generation to generation, kept deep within hidden libraries and ancient monasteries. A book that details with astonishing clarity what happens when we exhale our last breath. Sounds impossible, right? But what if I told you that this book exists? And not only does it exist, but it contains answers so profound that they could change the way you understand life, death, and what awaits us on the other side. Let's think about this for a moment. Humanity, throughout the ages, has been obsessed with what happens after death. Why? Because death is the great mystery, the unknown that we all, sooner or later, will have to face. Some traditions speak of a final judgment, others of reincarnation, and some even suggest that we simply fall into an endless void. However, there are those who have left clearer clues about this journey, and it is in this mysterious book where we find fascinating answers. The promise is that by the end of this video, you will not only know the details of what happens when we die, but will also uncover a final revelation, the most powerful and surprising of all, a truth that has been hidden in plain sight and that could has been hidden in plain sight. Change your life forever. Before we dive deep into the content of this book, let's consider something fundamental. Why are we so afraid of death? Is it the fear of the unknown? Or is it the dread that our existence simply extinguishes like a candle in the night? This book suggests that our understanding of death is limited, that what we perceive as the end is, in fact, a new beginning, a passage to another reality, a transition to dimensions that our physical senses cannot grasp. The fascinating thing about this book is that it is not based on conjectures or assumptions. The authors throughout the centuries have gathered deep knowledge from various spiritual, scientific, and philosophical traditions, from the ancient Egyptians to scholars of Christian mysticism, through the sacred texts of Hinduism and Buddhism. All these sources agree on one thing: death is not the end. In fact, it is the beginning of something much greater. One of the key concepts we find in these pages is the idea of light. Many people who have had near-death experiences talk about a tunnel of light, a warm and welcoming light that seems to draw them in. This book explains that light is not just a visual phenomenon. It is a manifestation of a higher reality. It's as if, at the moment of death, the doors to a realm beyond our physical perception open, but that has always been there. However, what is even more intriguing is what happens before we reach that light. According to this text, there is a process of review. Yes, a review of our lives. Upon dying, we experience a rehashing of all our actions, thoughts, and emotions. Everything we have done, everything we have said, is presented to us in a clear panorama, without judgment or condemnation, merely as an objective assessment of our existence. It's as if, at that moment, our consciousness is freed from the limitations of the body and can see life from a broader perspective. This process, according to the book, is not meant to punish us, but to help us understand the impact that our actions have had, not only on our own lives, but also on others. It is a moment of profound revelation, where the pieces of the puzzle of our life begin to fit together, and we grasp the lessons we came to learn in this earthly plane. And here arises an interesting question. Is it possible to prepare ourselves for this moment? Can we, in some way, anticipate this review and live our lives in a more conscious and meaningful way? According to the book, the answer is yes, and that is one of the great teachings it offers. Life is a school, and death is graduation. But, like in any school, the quality of our graduation depends on how we have learned and lived our lessons. This is just the beginning of what this mysterious book reveals to us about death and the beyond. In the coming minutes, we will explore in more detail what happens in those crucial moments after death. What happens to our consciousness? And how does this process affect our next existence? Are you ready to continue exploring these mysteries? And as I promised at the beginning, the final revelation will be the most important of all. Now that we've established that death is not an ending, but a transition to a new form of existence, let's delve into what exactly happens after that life review process. According to the mysterious book, this is just the first step. What comes next is even more revealing and, for many, perplexing. After reviewing our lives, the book mentions that we enter a state of detachment. It's a moment when we begin to let go of the ties that kept us connected to the physical world. This includes our desires, attachments, and unresolved emotions. Imagine for a moment how much we cling to things in life. People, material possessions, unfulfilled dreams, even resentments and grudges. The book says all of that must be released. It's as if, to continue our journey into the hereafter, we need to shed everything that has kept us anchored to the earth. This process of detachment is not easy for everyone. Some souls, the text says, find it difficult to let go of those attachments. And this is where concepts like limbo or the intermediate state arise. It's not so much a punishment as it has been portrayed by some popular beliefs, but rather a waiting place where souls remain until they manage to free themselves from their earthly attachments. Some souls cling to physical life so much that they need time to accept that their time in this world has ended. This intermediate state can last a short time or stretch out, depending on the individual. What's fascinating is that this process is also accompanied by spiritual guides, beings who, according to the book, have transcended the barriers of life and death, and whose purpose is to help us navigate this unknown terrain. Throughout history, many cultures have spoken of guides or angels who accompany the deceased on their journey. What this book reveals is that these guides are not only present to accompany us, but to help us understand the lessons we still need to learn. These guides are not distant or ethereal figures. In fact, many of them may have been people with whom we had a deep connection in our life. Perhaps a loved one who departed before us, or even a spiritual teacher we encountered in another existence. At this point in the journey, most souls begin to experience a sense of peace and clarity. It's as if, by letting go of the weight of their earthly concerns, they start to rise to a higher plane of existence. The book describes this moment as an ascension, not in a physical sense, but as an elevation of consciousness. It's a step closer to union with a universal truth, a source of knowledge and love that transcends anything we've known in life. However, not all souls reach this state with the same ease. According to the book, there are those who, because of their unresolved actions or emotions, feel drawn to a darker or denser reality. It is not hell, as some religions describe it, but rather a place of learning. It's a space where souls face the consequences of their decisions and have the opportunity to reflect on them. There is no eternal punishment, but rather a process of healing, understanding, and eventually liberation. This concept leads us to an important reflection. How does the way we live our lives influence what we will experience after death? This book suggests that our actions, thoughts, and emotions create energies that shape our experience in the afterlife. If we live with compassion, love, and wisdom, those energies will guide us toward higher planes of existence, where peace and knowledge are abundant. If, on the other hand, we carry hatred, resentment, or selfishness, those energies will keep us in a state of conflict and struggle, even after death. It is at this point that the book mentions something truly striking. The choice of what we experience after death is not imposed by an external force, but rather is a creation of our own consciousness. In other words, we are the architects of our post-mortem destiny. This may sound overwhelming, but it is also incredibly liberating. It means we have the power to influence what happens after death, and that power lies in how we choose to live our lives now. Think about it for a moment. If you knew that your actions and thoughts today are shaping the reality you will experience after you die, would you change anything in your life? Would you let go of those resentments that have consumed you for years? Would you live with more love, more gratitude, more purpose? The book invites us to reflect on these questions because the key to a peaceful death and a harmonious transition lies in how we live in the here and now. And this leads us to a crucial point. The book mentions that while we are in this intermediate state, we also have the opportunity to choose the kind of existence we want to have in the next life. Yes, because according to this mysterious text, death is not the end of the cycle. There is something beyond, and it is here that we are offered the option to return. This idea of reincarnation is not new. Many cultures and spiritual traditions have spoken of it for millennia. But what this book reveals is that it is not a random or predestined process. It is a conscious choice. In the next few minutes, we will explore in greater detail how this process of reincarnation works and what factors influence the decision to return or continue our journey towards higher planes of existence. What you discover will surprise you and help you understand that life and death are more connected than you ever imagined. We have reached one of the most intriguing aspects of this mysterious book, the process of reincarnation. As we mentioned earlier, death is not the end of existence, but the beginning of something new. For many souls, that something new means returning to physical life. But how does this process really work? Is it inevitable? Or as the book suggests, do we have the option to decide whether we return or not? First, it is important to understand that reincarnation, according to the text, is neither a punishment nor a reward. It is simply an opportunity to continue the learning we have not completed in past lives. Life from this perspective is a school, and like in any school, sometimes we don't manage to learn all of the lessons in one life. This is one of the key principles of karma, a concept that this book explores in depth. Karma is not an external force that controls us. It is the energy we create with our actions, thoughts, and emotions, and it follows us from one life to another. The most surprising revelation of this book is that not all souls are bound to reincarnate. In fact, the decision to return to physical life is a conscious choice. According to the text, after going through the life review and detachment process, we reach a point where we have enough clarity to decide what we want to do next. Some souls choose to return because they feel they still have lessons to learn, or because they wish to help other souls on their journey. Others, however, choose to move on to higher planes of existence, where learning continues, but in ways that do not involve physical life. The book describes this moment of decision as a state of deep reflection. We are not alone in this process. Our spiritual guides, the same ones who have accompanied us since the moment of our death, are there to help us make the right decision. They do not impose anything on us. They simply show us the possibilities. It's as if, in that moment, we can clearly see all the options before us. We can see the possible paths our next life will take if we choose to return, as well as the lessons we still need to learn. But we can also see what awaits us if we decide not to come back, if we opt to continue our journey to higher dimensions. One of the most astonishing aspects of this book is that it suggests many souls choose to return, not only for their own growth but out of love. The text speaks of a concept known as soul contracts, agreements we make with other souls before reincarnating. These contracts are promises to help each other with our respective lessons. For example, we might make a contract with a soulmate to meet in the next life as friends, family, or even as adversaries, all with the purpose of helping each other grow and evolve. This concept of soul contracts invites us to reconsider the nature of our relationships in this life and to ponder whether the most important people in our lives are really there by chance. And yes, even those with whom we have had difficult conflicts, the ones who have caused us pain or suffering, are actually playing a role in our spiritual growth. The book urges us to consider that every encounter, every relationship, and every experience we have serves a purpose, even if we don't understand it at the moment. However, as with everything in this process, the final decision is ours. If we feel we have learned what we need to learn in this life, we can choose not to return. In that case, what awaits us is something extraordinary. The book mentions that for those souls who choose not to reincarnate, there are a series of higher planes of existence they can explore. These planes are described as realms of light, love, and knowledge, where souls continue their spiritual evolution in a state of peace and harmony. Here, the duality of physical life, that constant struggle between good and evil, suffering and pleasure, disappears. All that remains is the purity of existence, a direct connection to the divine source, to the universal truth that governs all. For many, this description of the higher planes may sound like paradise. However, the book clarifies that it is not a place of eternal rest, but rather a state of expanded consciousness where we continue our learning. But in a deeper way, and less limited by the constraints of matter. It's as if, instead of learning through physical experience, we are learning directly through universal knowledge and wisdom. Here, souls may choose to become guides for other souls still in their process of evolution. Others, on the other hand, may simply choose to exist in this state of enlightenment, enjoying the peace and harmony of being in complete communion with the divine source. The most astonishing thing is that this book suggests that all of us, without exception, are destined to reach these higher planes eventually. It doesn't matter how many lives it takes us, or how many mistakes we make, we are all on a journey towards the light. Reincarnation, then, is nothing more than a tool in this journey, an opportunity to keep learning and growing until we are ready to transcend the duality of physical life and unite with the eternal truth. But as I mentioned at the beginning, there is a final revelation, a truth even deeper that this book holds for us. In the last minutes of this video, I will unveil what, according to this text, is the ultimate purpose of all existence. It is a truth so powerful that once you understand it, it will forever change the way you view life, death, and everything in between. We have now reached the climax of this enigmatic book. We have talked about death as a transition, the process of detaching from spiritual guides, the intermediate state, and the possibility of reincarnation. We have also explored the higher planes of existence, those realms of light and knowledge where souls continue their spiritual evolution. But now it is time to reveal the deepest offering of this book, the ultimate purpose of all existence. According to the mysterious book, the purpose of life, death, and everything we experience in the endless cycle of reincarnations and learning is the reunification with the Source. This Source is described as the origin of all that exists, beyond time, space, and the dimensions we can comprehend. It is the core of creation, the home that all souls, without exception, are destined to return to. And here lies a profound revelation. We are fragments of that same Source. By living, dying, and reincarnating, we are on a journey to remember our true divine nature. Let's think about this for a moment. All of life, the entire universe, all matter and energy are manifestations of this Source. From the smallest particle to the largest star in the cosmos, everything is infused with this divine essence. And each one of us, every individual soul, is a spark of that immense light. But at some point, at the origin of creation, we chose to separate from that unity. We ventured into duality, into material life with one sole purpose: to experience, to learn, and ultimately, to remember who we truly are. The book leads us to an incredibly powerful reflection. All suffering, all joy, everything we experience in our lives is nothing more than part of a cosmic game, a journey back toward the awareness of our own divinity. In this sense, death is simply a door we pass through repeatedly, a portal that takes us back to the core of our essence. But the journey doesn't end there. As we continue reincarnating, as we keep learning and evolving, we gradually begin to remember the truth, that we were never truly separated from the Source. We simply forgot. One of the most intriguing points the book mentions is that not all souls remember this truth at the same pace. Some may need hundreds or even thousands of lives to start glimpsing their connection to the Source, while others, more advanced in their spiritual journey, come to understand it in less time. But all eventually reach that crucial moment, the awakening. This awakening is described as the instant when a soul realizes with complete clarity that it is a divine fragment, that its life, its sufferings, its successes and failures were merely an illusion created for learning and growth. The awakening, however, is not the end of the journey. Once a soul has awakened to its true nature, it has the option to return to the Source immediately or to continue reincarnating, but this time with a different purpose. Instead of returning to learn lessons or balance karma, these advanced souls choose to come back to physical life with a single purpose: to help other souls awaken. These souls, described in the book as spiritual teachers, become beacons of light in the world. They are not here for themselves, but for others. They return with a mission to guide, to teach, and to demonstrate the path to truth to those who are still trapped in the cycle of forgetfulness. Imagine, for a moment, that some of the wisest and most loving people you've met in your life could be these spiritual teachers. People who, in one way or another, have deeply impacted your life, sparking in you a spark of understanding, a greater awareness, a deeper connection to the spiritual. Perhaps they didn't even realize their own role, but according to this book, we are all connected in this cosmic game of teaching and learning. By helping others, we help ourselves to remember. By guiding each other toward the light, we are fulfilling the highest purpose of our existence. And here is where the book presents its final and most powerful revelation. The ultimate purpose of all creation, of every individual soul, every reincarnation, every life and death, is the total reunification with the Source. It is a return to unity, but this time with a crucial difference. Now we do so with full knowledge of who we are. We are no longer just unconscious fragments, but fully aware beings of our divinity. As we return to the Source, we bring with us everything we have learned throughout our lives and experiences. In this sense, the Source is not static. It is also constantly evolving, because each soul that returns does so with new understandings, new experiences, and those experiences enrich the entirety of creation. This book raises a fascinating idea. Life is not just an endless cycle of reincarnations and learnings. It is a journey of expansion and returning home. Each of us, through our actions, thoughts, and decisions, is helping the Source to expand and grow. We are participating in a divine process of continuous creation. And the most powerful thing of all is that by remembering our true nature, we also remember our co-creative power. We have the ability to shape our reality both in this life and in the next, because we are part of the same energy that created the universe. This is the great mystery revealed by this book, that the ultimate purpose of life, death, and everything in between is conscious reunification with the divine. It is not something outside of us. It is something that has always been within. And in the end, we will all return home. Now that you have heard these revelations, I invite you to reflect deeply. How would you live your life if you knew for certain that you are a fragment of the divine? What decisions would you make if you understood that everything you experience is part of a bigger plan? I leave you with this question for you to contemplate. And if you feel inspired, share your thoughts in the comments. Because in the end, we are all on this journey together, and each of us has a role to play in the collective awakening of humanity. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the unknown, into the mysteries of life and death. But remember, even though this video comes to an end, your own journey continues. And who knows, perhaps the answers you seek are closer than you think. Thank you for watching.